going through that process of starting your online business, do you have any advice for any parents that are also looking at going through that process? If you were to go back to day one of starting your online business, is there anything you change or what steps would you take? Welcome everyone to the main journey, a way for you to join me on a learning journey through life. My name is Samuel Main, and today we welcome Adam Reid to the show. Welcome, Adam. It is good to see you. It's good to catch up.
Hey, how's it going?
So well, man. We first met a few years ago, I think it is now, through a coaching program. I'd love for you just to start this off. Can you give an insight into what you've been focusing on since then and share an overview, ultimately, of how you help people?
Yeah, sure. So I actually know the exact date. It was November 2019.
There we go. Memorable. God, it's been longer than I thought.
Yeah, the only reason I know is I actually did a presentation for the BTN Academy yesterday and I had to talk about my journey. So kind of went through everything. So yeah, so it's back then. So nearly 3 years ago. Yeah, so since then, when we first met, I literally just stepped online. In fact, I'd only been coaching. So I was a teacher for like 11 years and I'd been coaching, I don't know, 9 months, all face to face in a CrossFit box, doing a bit of nutrition. And then I made a massive jump to do stuff on my own, go online completely. That turned out pretty well. Like the first 12 weeks went really well, and then got better and better and better. Had a few hairy moments, like any business in between, and then literally November just gone, started getting other fit pros, other coaches reach out to me, asking me if I mentor or would mentor them. So I decided to go in on that as well. So that started off amazingly well. Had about seven coaches start with me within the first 10 days of launching. And now I'm kind of trying to balance the two, kind of reducing the mentoring side of stuff right now and actually focusing more on the fitness business side of stuff. And then I'm trying to build something else on the side, which you mentioned to, which is the SaaS kind of business.
Yeah. And a father.
Yeah, and yeah, I've got two little ones. So actually, when I started in November 2019, my little boy was due in the December. So I had my second child due, and my little girl was only 2 at the time. I don't know whether it was the best time to be leaving a stable teaching job and starting a business, but luckily it worked out all right. And we had actually only moved house about 6 months before. So we'd moved countries the year before from Thailand back to England. And then the 6 months later, we then moved house and then I started a business. So yeah, I picked a crazy time to do stuff.
I like it. I always view it as like change is inevitable. So you may as well roll with it.
There's always going to be something. And if I'd waited, there was a pandemic 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
So I could have used that as another excuse.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's just stuff always happens. So there's no point putting off anything.
I love that you mentioned about being a teacher. I'm intrigued. Was there any skills that carried over from being a teacher that then carried over into, now the online businesses that you run?
Yeah, a few actually. And one that I never thought would. So as a teacher, I was actually a head of year at one point, and one of my particular strengths was dealing with essentially the naughtier children. And I never really thought about it until kind of got into coaching, but actually, essentially, you have to be fairly persuasive. And you have to, especially with the challenging children, convince them of making a certain choice or decision. And I've actually realized it's lent itself massively in terms of sales. Because you couldn't tell a naughty child what to do.
Yeah.
You couldn't say you've got to do this or do that. Like that's the worst thing you could do, because they'd be like, get lost. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. So you had to question them and challenge them in a way that it was their decision. And I almost feel like that has lent itself massively to sales, because from my experiences, I found that sales is more about actually questioning and coaching people to make a decision for themselves, and it be the best decision for themselves. So I would say it's probably one of the biggest things. And teaching as well, compared to coaching, I found teaching has really developed in terms of like questioning, formative assessment, getting people to kind of, or children to learn for themselves. Like it's really pushed towards independent learning. And I think that really helps with the coaching and essentially trying to focus like questions towards people so that they're making the decisions for themselves and they feel empowered and have that level of autonomy. So I would say they're the two main things, really.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I initially, coming from a coaching background, I was like, oh, it's going to be about managing groups of people and being able to, coach them and give them that support, not looking at the persuasion aspect. So I was like, oh, instantly there's something there for me to take away, which is quite interesting. So it sounds like you went through a pretty large career change and a large move too, with moving from Thailand back to the UK. What was that experience like for you? And do you have any advice for someone that's potentially looking at a major change like that?
Yeah, so basically, we were talked about this before, kind of come on. So I had a really, like, it was a great job. We worked in a British international school. We were paid very, very well. The kids were amazing. The school facilities were incredible. Like we had like the Thai tennis -- and we had a guy that had played at Wimbledon who was the tennis coach, and it was amazing, really cool experience. So I knew that we were going to come back home at some point. And I was always adamant I would never teach in the UK again, just because the schools I'd worked in and experiences in UK schools that I'd had. So I knew that I wanted to do something else, and I got a job in a CrossFit gym, and I loved it. And I didn't know whether that was what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do something around health fitness. I was a PE teacher. So my advice, if anyone's making a transition, or from my experiences, is I wouldn't go all in and just ditch everything. I built mine really, really slowly on the side. So it actually started when my wife was pregnant with our first child, and that was it. That was like, right, okay, now I have to do this. So I literally just started by posting content, writing blogs, whenever I could,
Yeah.
much as I could. I remember being sat on a hotel floor in New Zealand. My wife was sick at the time with morning sickness, and we couldn't do anything. She couldn't go out. She was really bad. So I was like, oh, sod it. I'll sit on my phone and I'll write a post. Like I'll write a blog. So I just put content out there. People started to see that I had some knowledge, some expertise, started to build relationships, but I never asked for anything in return. I just put value out. And then when I came back to the UK, I just sought out as many people as I could that had done what I wanted to do. I literally phoned, emailed, wrote to CrossFit gym owners. Ron, who we were talking about at CrossFit Training Land, I would say he was my first mentor. Him and I can't remember the other guy's name now. That's really bad. So basically, I said to him, look, I want to start a gym, or I want to start something. Can I literally shadow you? And they said, yeah, of course you can. And they literally let me see what they did every single day. And it didn't, like, even though I did all of this stuff, it didn't prepare me for actually doing it. So another thing, so the first thing I'd do is, like, I would recommend anyone who's looking to jump into a new business or do something, go and get as much help as you can. Go and ask advice from as many people as possible. Second thing is just start actually doing stuff. Like, whatever it is you want to do, go do it. Like, go work in a gym or go and actually start coaching people. It's the only way you're going to learn. I was still teaching when I come back, so I had to have a stable job because we were going to get a mortgage. So I approached one gym owner, and he said, look, rather than you starting your own gym, because that was the initial plan, why don't you do nutrition from my CrossFit gym, and you could do some CrossFit coaching and stuff here? And I was like, okay, sounds great. So I did that part-time, did my teaching. That grew to a point where I could go part-time in the teaching. And then in the end, I made enough money to kind of say, okay, well, it's not a massive risk anymore, especially because I had a mortgage, another kid on the way. So then I was like, okay, right, that's it now. I can go all in. And yeah, just took that jump. And I think the biggest thing that actually sped up my development was actually the coaching that I had through Remote Fit Pro, where I met you. It was obviously a much more intense kind of mentorship, and it was like, right, bang, you've got to do it. And because I had kids and it was a large investment for me at the time, there was no option. I had to make it work. I had to make money. Otherwise, you know, my family were going to be not going to get Christmas presents.
You made that commitment.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah, hopefully there's some takeaways there for.
It's really interesting. So I've got here, one, you ultimately started to build an audience through creating content, sharing that value. You then intentionally went to learn from other people around you by reaching out, connecting, and then ultimately got to the place where you would then invest into yourself. And I think that's a pretty healthy timeline for people to follow. It's really interesting you mentioned about reaching out for mentorship and advice, and then also trialing it yourself too. Because I think that that's missed. There are so many people out there willing to help and willing to give away so much, and not enough people ask for help enough. Ultimately, especially in business, you can fast track your success by going and seeing what the pros are doing, seeing what those people that are in your shoes are doing, and that can help you so much.
Yeah. There's so many people I'm really thankful for the start of my journey. Like, Ron at Training Grounds, like they literally showed me all the systems,
Yeah,
everything. I had no idea how to run a bit. I was a teacher. I had no idea. And then the guy that gave me is the opportunity at the gym to run nutrition. Like he massively helped me out in terms of, I remember I was charging £60 a month, and he was like, "What are you doing?" He said, like, you literally could change people's lives in terms of the results that you get and how much healthier they are, that their happiness, their confidence. And he was the first one to kind of say, right, you need to increase your prices to £200 a month. And at the time I was like, what? But people were willing to pay it because of the results. And then I remember working with Remote Fit Pro, and they were like, actually, you need to charge £1,000 for like a program. And I was like, whoa, okay.
That sounds like something we do. Yeah, I love it. I find it really interesting you mentioned about at some stage you just ultimately had to start doing it, because this is something that's been a real learning curve for me. Was that the example I like to give is I read all of the books about learning how to swim, let's say, but it wasn't until I actually jumped into the water that you start to then truly learn what you actually need to be doing. And I think that applies to a lot of things in health, in fitness, and then also in building a business, is that you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, but if there's something you want to do at some stage, you have to take that leap. And that then starts a whole new journey for you to go on. And it sounds like, that's ultimately what you've done. So I have a question for you. Going through that process of starting your online business, do you have any advice for any parents that are also looking at going through that process?
Yeah. I think what you just said about, you can read as much as you want, but you have to take some kind of action. Like you have to go and experience it. Like I read, I don't know if you heard of Two Brain Business. They have like a mentorship program. I read both their books.
I haven't, but keep going.
I read the E-Myth,
Yeah.
all of these books, and I thought I knew exactly what to do. I even built all the systems, processes, SOPs for a CrossFit gym that never
Nice.
existed. I had everything in place, and I was like, that's it. It's going to be successful. It wasn't until I actually started doing it that actually, like, I realized what was needed, and it was none of the stuff that I'd done. And actually, yes, the books were helpful, but there's nothing that can prepare you for owning a business or running a business as doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as I said, like mentorship, as you said as well, I think that's huge. Like that's been massive. I've continually invested ever since. So since November 2019, which is less than 3 years, I've spent over 30 grand on mentors, coaches. I know there's people out there spending far more than I have.
Well, it's do say there's a lot of people say, oh, 30 grand, that could be a deposit for a house. That could be, a large amount in the stock market, in crypto, if you even wanted to go there, and you get X amount of reward. But I look at it as, okay, if you've invested that much into yourself, your character, your skills, those are going to perform and provide you dividends, over the years to come. But it also fast tracks the amount. Nothing can compete with how much you can make in business and how fast that can happen. So, if your ROI of investing 30 grand is now, 6 figures that you're earning in your coaching business, well, that over a 30-year time span is now considerably bigger and better than what a house would return.
And that's what I was going to say, is that 30 grand might seem like a lot, but actually my ROI is far more than any other investment.
Mhm.
Like in terms of what I've made since November 2019, like it
Yep.
massively outweighs it, and that will keep paying back year upon year.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's important to note with that, it's not, if you've made an investment, that's not your job done. I know, having worked with you, that you had relentless work ethic, and that's the reason that you've ultimately been then successful in your businesses. So for those of you that are listening that have made some significant investments, that isn't the job done. That is just step one. That's going to allow you to build from there. So I want to just revert back to the question for advice for parents starting an online business.
okay, so depending on your kids, mine never slept. You're going to be tired. Like you're going to have to just suck it up. I'm really sorry. There is no magic cure. Like you are going to be tired. So you just have to work through it. Coffee's a great that. For me, I always try to structure my time around my family. That's been really, really important. So the first thing that goes into my diary is family time. So I always have structured, right, I definitely take time off of the weekends. So I spend time with my kids. I always are there for bedtime and bath time. So, you know, whatever is important to you, I think it's important to set that aside for your own mental health, your well-being, so that you don't miss them grow up. I know there's different mindsets around that. Obviously, for me, like I would never miss them growing up and those moments for anything. I guess you just have to be. You have to be. I think like efficient. You have to be really efficient with your time because you do have less time. In because of if you want to spend time with your kids. If you don't and you're happy to work long hours and not see them and get up in it, that's fine. Not there's no right or wrong here. But if like me, you don't want to and you want to spend that time with them, then you're going to have to be more efficient. So my wife, like, she does get annoyed sometimes because I'll be on my phone when we're together, and it's because I don't interact with my friends or family during work hours.
Yeah.
I am literally like, these are my work hours and I'm getting to work. And I don't go on social media. I don't scroll social media. I don't do anything that is non-work related in work hours. So then when I am switching off, I will be on my phone and I do them, maybe read Twitter or like, texting my mates.
Yeah.
So, and obviously if I'm working so many hours and then I've only got so many hours with my wife, she's a bit like, come on, put your phone away. I'm like, okay, but this is the only time I use my phone.
That's really interesting because I like that you say you put your family time first, because that is incredibly important. Obviously for me, single guy, don't have any family commitments, essentially, or kids, let's say. But I like that that's the first thing that goes into your calendar. I think that's a really healthy place to start, because then it forces you to up level with your business after that. You've got minimal time. So you've got to make it happen. If you were to go back to day one of starting your online business, is there anything you change, or what steps would you take?
Personally, I wouldn't change anything I've done. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've lost a lot of money as a result of some of the mistakes I made, but I wouldn't change it because essentially I genuinely, I wasn't sure whether I would be successful. I remember me and my wife having conversations before I went full time, thinking, well, when do you decide whether it's going to work or not? And like, okay, and if it doesn't work, what are you going to do? So we had those conversations. So I guess that's another one as well. If anyone's thinking of making that jump, is make sure you have an exit plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that in mind, the fact that I'm still here and I've been every year has been more and more successful than the previous year. I guess I wouldn't change anything for that reason. And in terms of action steps, I would probably say I'd go and get mentored day one. I would do my due diligence. The one thing I would change is I would do more due diligence than I did.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I'm not unhappy with the coaching program I entered into at all, and I was successful, and it really gave me a step. The kind of the place to go from. but I probably would have looked around a bit more to make sure that the program that I was a real good fit for me.
Yeah.
And there are lots more on there than lots more out there than I was aware of.
There is,
I was,
especially now. Especially now, from my perspective, is having been now in this coaching industry online for the last 5+ years, the amount of now coaches and other mentors there are out there, it's really interesting to see. So I think you're so spot on with that due diligence and finding someone that aligns with your principles and how you want to build your business is key.
yeah,
Key.
100%. And I think you said something as well, I think is so important. Just because you invest then in a mentor or a coach or whatever you want to call it, that does not guarantee you success. That will not guarantee that you make money. In fact, I've been in so many programs now where I've seen so many people that have not made money, that have not been successful, yet blame the program. When everything works, like I've done challenges, I've used a free group, I've done paid advertising, I've done like everything works, everything. And all programs people are successful in. So that tells me, and I've been successful in every program I've been in, that tells me that essentially it's on you. You've got to put the work in.
Yeah. I think the way to put that is that all of these tools can work for you or they can work against you. But what's key is your own identity shift and the mind work that you put in, and then ultimately doing the hard tasks and doing the boring, monotonous work that's needed to have a successful business. The people that have the best businesses are the ones that are consistent and disciplined in that boring, monotonous work ultimately. What do you feel then was key to your success with building the businesses?
So one of my friends, he calls me a unicorn. Just because he's been in pretty much every program I have and seen I've done. And I think it's down to, I would say I'm quite relentless. Like I am very consistent and very driven, but I try to only focus on the actual needle mover tasks. Like one of the things I realized very, very quickly, I think Remote Fit Pro really hammered this home to me, that all you need to focus on is having conversations, booking calls, and making sales. And I would go along the lines of actually building relationships. Like rather than just as a numbers game. Because actually it doesn't need to be a numbers game if you're good at building relationships and trust and rapport and stuff. But I would say I'm quite relentless in that aspect. And I could be wrong, but from my experience, the more time I spend in Messenger building relationships with people, I've seen a direct correlation with the outcome in terms of revenue generated. And I think a lot of people are not prepared to have the conversations that they need to have to make money or have a business that they want.
Yeah, I think that relationships, that authenticity is so important, that connection more than ever. It's not like it used to be where you could run traffic to an application form, make a phone call, and boom, someone buys. Like the industry has adapted and progressed so much more nowadays. Have you had any kickback from friends, family when you've been going through this process of building your business? And how have you overcome that if you have?
Okay, so I was talking to someone about this the other day. When I first started, obviously as a teacher, I hate it. I didn't really enjoy social media either, so I didn't really ever post anything. So putting stuff on social media, especially myself, was very like alien to me. Obviously, I was used to speaking, but not recording myself. Or talking about something I really cared about. And I remember the first kickback, or not kickback, but the first thing, my wife would like take the piss out of me. She was like, "What is that voice that you're doing?" So I don't know why, but when I used to film myself, I used to put on a funny voice, like me, just this weird coaching voice. And then I used to play football, and every week I used to just get hammered, absolutely hammered by my mates. So there was that. And actually, when I was going to shift from what I'm doing with my fitness business to the mentoring. One of my closest friends, he's incredibly successful actually, and I speak to him about it, and he said, "Why? Like, what are you doing? You have a successful business. Like, why are you doing that? Like, just stick to what you know and what you're good at."
Yeah.
And my mum and dad, they questioned it.
So how did you overcome some of those challenges? How did you keep progressing through?
So with the social media side of things, just kept doing it, just
Mhm.
literally doing it over and over. And what my wife was saying was true. She's actually, at the start, she was amazing. She was so critical and so honest, and it was what I needed. And she was just like, you need, like, this is not good. This is so taking that feedback in a constructive way and just keep on reiterating and just keep putting it out there, irrespective of what people are saying, doing. My mates, they weren't who were going to buy off me, so I just laughed it off,
Yeah.
and it stopped because I carried on. In the end, they realized I was serious about it, and they just stopped. And it doesn't happen anymore. They don't look at my content. They don't follow me. They're not interested. And then obviously when it became successful and I started making money, then it definitely stopped.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always the way. Always the way. So it's you mentioned there about keeping going. Naval Ravikant, who's one of his book, the is it the Almanac of Naval Ravikant? I
Yeah.
think one of my favorite books. But he talks about it's not 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 iterations, which is talking about that. Keep going, keep failing, keep pushing forward. And then also you mentioned about ultimately that judgment from other people and especially your loved ones. And that's ultimately because they care. And in a perfect world, they'd wrap you up in bubble wrap. You would never leave your comfort zone and you'd have a secure job so that you've always got a roof over your head. That's what they want for you ultimately. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear how you just continue being able to press forward with that. And I've definitely experienced that through my journey.
I think actually I have to give my parents a lot of praise and thank them. Although they questioned when I was going to go from the fitness business to mentoring, because I was potentially considering just ditching my fitness business.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was making the jump from teaching to business and pretty much anything I chose to do, they were like, "Go for it.
Brilliant.
What's the worst that happen?" And they like, my wife kind of laughs about it because she's like, you can do no wrong. Like, you're amazing at everything. And I guess like my mom and dad have always kind of blown smoke up my ass and always said like, you're capable of whatever you want. And they're like, so when I wanted to start a business, they're like, go for it. Like, you're capable of doing it. If you want to do that, go and do it. And I think that has massively helped.
That's really cool.
Having that kind of belief and support behind me.
Yeah, that belief aspect is huge. It's so powerful. There's a framework I really like, or a guidance, the fear setting by Tim Ferriss, where he does a TEDx talk. You can just Google it, and he talks, ultimately these things that you're looking to overcome. What's the worst case scenario? And for most of us, especially most of these guys that are listening to this podcast, we're in a place where our worst case scenario is more than likely that we need to go and get a 9-to-5 job. And within a couple of years, we'll probably be able to pay off our bills and our debts. Like, that worst case scenario isn't that bad. And what's the best case scenario of you starting a business and, trusting your instincts and believing in yourself? The best case scenario is more scary than the one of failing.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Like, and me and my wife talked about the worst case scenario, and we've even I had a phase. So my business was heavily built on paid advertising.
Yeah,
I think it was November 2020, and it was the US elections and Black Friday all in November time, and I turned off my ad account because it was just mental. Ads cost froze and stuff like that. Anyway, I still managed to get a permanently restricted account with my ads off. I wasn't running ads. I tried to obviously get them turned back on. They reviewed it. They said, yeah, they're fine. Within 3 days, bang, permanently restricted forever. Nothing I could do. No one I could talk to. And I was like, shit.
Yeah.
I had no ad account. I had nothing I could do. I couldn't set up another one. and I was like, my business was heavily reliant on it. I managed to make between kind of 5-10K a month without an ad account, but it wasn't enough because I had like 5 coaches at the time, and I had all these people to pay, and I was a bit like, I was losing money every month. And I remember sat down with my wife saying, okay, here's where we're at. Like, if things don't change, then potentially, business is over.
Yeah.
And it actually, when we sat down and talked about it, it wasn't that bad. Like, I could go get another, I just go like anyone else, even though I've got kids and a mortgage, my wife has a stable job.
Yeah.
Just go get a job as a teacher again. I could
Yep.
go get a job doing supply. I would happily pick up 2 jobs if I needed to. It doesn't matter. We wouldn't end up on the streets, whatever happened. We've got families.
Yeah. How fortunate are we, right, that that's the case? But I also think that's that's one of those benefits of having invested in yourself, is you've developed the character and the skill that you could go and do that. And of course, there's people that are not in that position. There's other people that do have those challenges. But I think by having that conversation with your partner and that awareness, it allows you to then operate from a place of confidence with what you are doing in your business and be able to adapt and make those changes. Before we jumped on, or maybe even at the start of this, because we talked about, you essentially did create an exit plan. Can you talk about that, and ultimately what would be the benefit of someone actually creating an exit plan? Because it's not something I've delved into much before.
Yeah, so we didn't go into, I didn't go into too much detail. I've always had belief in myself that I could make it work. Like, even when I got to that point with my wife, we had to sit down and have that discussion. I genuinely believed I'd turn it all around, and I did. So it was kind of like, okay, well, if worse comes to worse, so essentially I needed, like, there was an amount of money that I was willing to get to where I had to then make a decision.
Yeah.
So essentially, when there's X amount left in the business, or, I wasn't making X amount per month, it was like, okay, then I need to step away. The exit plan for me, because of my expertise, like in terms of having teaching experience, would be to first of all just go and get a sign up with agencies and get supply. Contact all my old schools that I'd worked with, all my people that I'd worked with before that were like senior leaders, head teachers, and see if they could get me jobs. And that was essentially it. I think now I would never go back to teaching. I think with the investment I've made, so I've worked with Mike Samuels, who's a copywriter. He's incredible. And I've worked with like individuals as well as mentorship programs. So I worked with a woman called Alicia Barr, who's specialized in just sales. She's really good. I think, and obviously being a business owner and wearing all the hats, I think now my exit plan would be to basically go and explore as many avenues as possible and stay in the online world. So, and I have a plan for each of those in case it comes to that.
Yeah, that is the direct benefit of making those investments, but developing your skill. You can go and make those connections. It's one of the reasons for me of why I wanted to develop this podcast, was to expand my network of connections and to learn. And that gives me a foot in the door if I ever did want to make some changes or to lean into any other different industries in a way. I've actually just created a video on why every coach should start a podcast, is specifically for that reason. You just do not know what opportunities and connections you can make. Yeah, how fortunate are we, right, that's the case. Is there then, so obviously right now you've got your hands full. I know that you've got the fitness business, you've then got the mentorship business. You're also, I'm hoping I can share this in the development of the SaaS business. Like what's enough for you?
My wife always says this actually, and it worries me a little bit. I don't know. I think I do always need a challenge. And I think that's part of one of the reasons why I like being a business owner. And actually, I can never see myself being employed again. I think I'm always going to seek out some kind of challenge.
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was last year. Yeah, last year. So the business had consistently made like 30K a month after month after month. and I was almost very comfortable,
Yeah.
like, in terms of my life, in terms of where everything was. And I could sense I was getting not bored, but I needed something else. And I think that's where the mentorship side came along. So when people and then I was like, oh, should I just dump the fitness business and start again from scratch? And actually, that's maybe a bit of I don't know whether it's almost like a sabotage behavior that I need to work through. And maybe something I need to address. I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. I'm sure time will tell. Um, so yeah,
Really interesting. It's so I've been fortunate enough that I connected with Dr. Corey Wilkes, and he specializes in working alongside 7-8 figure entrepreneurs. And we delved into self-sabotage and ultimately how common it is. Because here's the thing, in business, in what we're doing, yes, there's ups and downs, but it's a relatively straight path. You get better every single day. You continue to have good awareness of where you're at right now. You optimize and you gradually build, build, and build. But what takes us off track is that self-sabotage.
yeah,
So that's really interesting that you mentioned that. And I suppose it shows the power of investing in yourself there, and that, you know, that can limit that self-sabotage when you're surrounded by other people that are probably one having those thoughts too, but are also continuously trying to get to that next level.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Have you ever read the book The Big Leap?
Yes. Yeah, it's great.
I think for me that had a really big impact,
Hmm.
like recognizing that, because I remember actually with Remote Fit Pro. So with Remote Fit Pro, I had my first 10K cash collected month, like within the 3 month program.
Yeah.
Literally the week after, I felt burnt out,
Hmm. Yep.
and my like energy levels were through the floor. I remember me and my wife having a like massive row,
Yeah.
and then I remember 3 months later I read The Big Leap. Another mentor I worked with sent it to me, and I was like, Jesus, that's what it was. Like I just hit a ceiling, and I brought myself back down to where I was. Um,
It's super
yeah,
interesting. And it's often as a protection mechanism for yourself, but also potentially a protection mechanism for those around you, which is
yeah,
super interesting. Um, yeah, I love that you brought that up, because it's, I think everyone has a level of self-sabotage, and
yeah,
it's even happened for me. It's happened for me this year, and that I had my best months, 5 figures a month, and then I went to Africa, and now it's like catch up. It's like, oh, wait a minute, like lots of changes are happening, but it's such a great learning experience. It's also, I think, once you've had those massive highs, you realize like what's possible,
yeah,
and that's been huge. And we mentioned identity earlier, and that, I believe, is such a massive aspect of this change, in that you've got the skills, you've got the know-how. It's just then, are you willing to step into those shoes? Are you
yeah,
willing to make those bigger decisions, take on that more responsibility, invest into yourself, learn, study, stay consistent? Because if you can do that, your income is never limited.
yeah. 100.
Never limited.
I think there's stories, aren't there, that people tell themselves, that ultimately limit them. You know, oh yeah, they can earn that much, but I can't.
Hmm.
In fact, I've worked with. I remember working with one coach, and they were like, oh yeah, like you've obviously done really well, but it wasn't during the pandemic. Like they kind of questioned it,
Yeah.
as if to kind of like um back up why they weren't having the same level of success.
Yeah.
And obviously, I could tell what that was like.
Yeah.
It was them telling them,
Recognize it.
yeah, these stories to essentially limit themselves.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think people do that quite a lot, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from my perspective, it was only 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was earning under 10 grand a year. I was living in a deserted hotel, trying to, ultimately build the business. And every single person around me was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Go get a job at McDonald's, go get a job at the gym, go do anything but what you're doing. Yeah, things change. Things change. but it comes from that skill development. It comes from taking that risk, taking that leap, and continuously doing that, really. But there's so much that's possible, so much that's possible. So this actually leads to one of my favorite questions that I have on this podcast. So I ask every single guest. You don't have to rush to answer, but what advice would your future self give you in this current moment?
I think they probably wouldn't give advice. They would probably ask me a question, and that I would have to answer myself and figure out the answer to. I think they would ask me, what is it that you really want out of life?
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately that would determine what I do next.
Wow.
So do I want the 7-figure business? Do I want a big behemoth of a business with people working for me,
Yeah.
and that level of stress and income?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to play it a bit smaller?
Yeah.
With less stress? I don't know. I think that's what they would ask me, because I think that's where I'm currently at in terms of, okay, where do I push?
Interesting. I think there's two questions there for everyone to ask themselves. One is that question, what advice would your future self give you in this current moment? And then two, what is it that you really want out of life?
Mm-hmm.
And just to give some insight, and I don't want this to be your path, and I don't want this to be me influencing your decision, but I helped a couple scale their FitPro coaching business. A fitness coaching business to we were hitting about 45K a month. And there's a lot of team development, there's a lot of repetition in the sales that's needed there. It's a lot of pressure, and they ultimately decided that actually that wasn't for them. So I've seen the opposite, where people have lent into that even more and thrived on it. So it'll be really interesting to see your journey and what that looks like.
I I've spoke to people as well that are kind of ahead of me,
Yeah.
and I can see that's the biggest challenge. And I got to a point last year where I was in a place where I wanted to hire setters and sales team,
Yeah.
and potentially scale. And I can see that it would be a big challenge. So I need to ask myself, is that where I really want to go with
Yeah.
this?
The biggest thing was your expense floor rises so high. So are you comfortable with having that level of expenses every single month? And if you can accept that, then you can grow rapidly. But if having that level of expenses is out then of your comfort zone, that's where the challenges will come up.
Yeah, because obviously if you have a bad month or bad few months, like in the middle of a recession, how much can you part with, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a challenging thought.
I have a challenging question for you. Do you feel that you potentially started the FitPro mentorship program as a way of self-sabotage to the fitness coaching business growing so well?
Yes. On
Mm.
reflection, yes. I genuinely thought it'd be easier. And I don't know why. I just thought, well, I've done one business. I just, it'd be easy. It's business. But it's not. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what the business, same challenges. And if whatever challenges you face in one business, you'll face in the other. And I always remember when I first started, I think there's a video that Alex Hormozi talks about, where he had a conversation with someone who's at, like, obviously they're at 7-8 figures. Yeah. And the guy turns around and says, oh, well, I'm stuck at 5 million a year. I'm thinking about doing this business instead. And Alex is saying, why don't you just solve the problems with your 5 million pound business so that you can get to 10 million, then start a business from scratch? How long is it going to take you to get to 5? And I think that kind of hit home with me. I was like, and I think there's definitely been an element of self-sabotage that's why that came in.
Yeah.
Sure.
Ultimately, the only way you get past that is that awareness. So hopefully now that you can sit on that, you can actually go, okay, what do I need to correct from here to make sure I am on that right path? And you know, from my background, obviously being on the gym floor, coaching, traveling, all of that, and then transitioning into the business coaching industry, what's really interesting for me and ultimately the business, the how much you need to adapt and constantly be growing and learning. In the fitness coaching, the fundamentals and the principles are there. You know, okay, do this many steps, lift weights this many times, stay in a calorie deficit. You know, those principles are there. With the business coaching, yes, there are some principles, but it's constantly changing. What worked on LinkedIn, you know, 5 months ago doesn't work today. What worked on Facebook a year ago does not work today. And that's been a really interesting challenge of that. It's just constant.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely see that. I think as well, coaching coaches, like the business aspect, there are so many moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think as well, to be a really successful online coach, you've got to be good with copy, you've
Yeah.
got to be good with sales, you've got to get good results, good with marketing. You've got to have all of those skills. And obviously, to help someone be good at all of those, where they're maybe not even natural at any of those, like it's really challenging. But then you've also got, as we've talked about, the self-sabotage element. Like I it's definitely a lot harder than I thought it was. And I genuinely think it's harder to get coaches results than it is a fitness client, a weight loss client.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. It's like you say, wearing all of those hats is difficult. But it's also, that's why the rewards can be so much higher.
Yeah.
You know, welcome to the game we play.
Yeah.
Welcome to the game we play. So, Adam, where would be the best place for someone to come and connect with you, to learn from you? You know, if they were looking to get some mentorship, either in the fitness or in the business space.
Yeah, sure. So we talked about this thing on our initial chat last week. I don't really use social media at the moment. So if you go onto my social media pages, you probably think, what the hell does Adam work? So don't go there. I have some Facebook groups. So actually, if you go to my Facebook page, the first post, which is a pinned post, basically, if you're a menopausal woman, which I don't think any of your audience are, there's a link to join my group there, where I give a ton of value in terms of what's working with my clients. And if you're not, and if you're an online fit pro and you want some free value, I've got a group for you as well.
Cool.
So if you're an online fitness coach, there's a group there where I give free value. So actually, I've just put a poll out, I think, today, where I'm going to do like a free kind of walkthrough of how to recession-proof your business.
Ooh,
Like
nice.
the things I would do if you're worried about the upcoming recession.
Needed for a lot of people. Man, I want to just express my gratitude for your time. It's been a lot of fun. I think it's been some really interesting conversations, and I truly am excited to see what changes occur in the next couple of months or even next 6 months, and see where you're at in business, because I think it's gonna be a little bit different. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, I'm interested as well to see what I end up doing.
That's great. I massively appreciate your time, man. I look forward to what's to come.
Yeah, great chatting, Sam. All right, take care.
Appreciate you, man. My name is Samuel Main, and I truly hope that you've got value from today's video. If you have, please do hit like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow.